I want to open today's video by saying that no, that was not a clickbait thumbnail. So we are in a bit of a trouble, and I'm actually in a very cheerful mode. So what happened is that on the May 20th, the president of Taiwan, Mr. Lai over here, hosts his inauguration ceremony. Congratulations, by the way, President Lai. And a lot of political commentators, okay, in Taiwan and in China says that, okay, he's not going to say something provocative because it doesn't really matter what he say here. He's going to try to be easy and balanced. But what will happen is what matter will be what he will do after the inauguration. And that's what China will do and act and countermeasure depending on what he do, not what he said during his ceremony. And he went on the stage and basically blasted everything out, like right out there. And everyone in China, and a lot of people in Taiwan just dropped their jaw. So basically what happened is that, you know, those narco movies, you have like a narco boss, drug dealer, cartel, very mean, with like a room full of minions with shotguns and tattoos and, you know, scars. And then you have this lonely guy walk into the bar, all right? And you kind of expect whatever he say or he try to demand is going to be, you know, balanced and conservative. And no, he just said the most offensive thing in front of the boss and all the minions. And what happened is that everyone start cocking the shotguns and, you know, and trying to go for it. And what if you go to the Chinese social media and watch, oh my god, it was colorful. You have people say basically, you got boss, okay? You got boss, I like you. That's the way to go, yes. You're gonna get what you are coming for. All those kind of things. Wow. But today, I'm gonna go straight into the topic of what the responses is. Okay, let's start with Professor Yuan here. Philosophy professor in the University of Taipei. And let's see what he says, okay? I am extremely troubled by the President Lai's inauguration speech and the follow-up response of the Chinese mainland government. I make today's video in order to explain to you the current situation between Taiwan and mainland China. Let me summarize President Lai's speech regarding Taiwan and China into three core components. The first one, President Lai gave a speech that is extremely provocative to China and is intentional. Second, President Lai openly stated the narrative of Taiwan and China are two separate countries. Third, President Lai shamelessly said that Taiwan's future strategy is to lean on US support towards its independence. All right. Let's see what he says after. After the speech and within 3 days, China immediately organized and conducted a military drill surrounding the Taiwan island. This military exercise went as far as to surround even the minor islands of Taiwan, which are closer to Chinese mainland. It is one of the most intensive military drills in modern history. There are many people in Taiwan, perhaps in the world, who do not understand why China has such a furious reaction. Today, I'm going to explain to you why. In addition, I want to reach out to as many people as possible for them to understand that this is not a regular drill, that this is a significant escalation from the north, and people need to be pessimistic about what is happening now in the Taiwan Strait. I'm going to express myself using three main points. First point, sovereignty issue. People need to understand this is a matter of sovereignty to China. China, as one of the most powerful countries on this planet, it has spent many efforts over the years and decades to improve its governance, culture, economy, and technology. The core goal of China is to one day, through its success, attract the population in Taiwan to unify with China willingly through peaceful means. However, the speech gave by President Lai was extremely offensive and provocative. Most offensive part being lean on US seek independence, which led to the extremely aggressive military posture from China. This, I believe, is the most important aspect of the current situation, that China's sovereignty is under threat. The second point I have to make, and I am not sure when President Lai gave his speech, does he really understand the consequence it carries? President Lai is throwing the entire population of Taiwan into the raging fire of war. Does he really care about the Taiwanese people? Does he not have any decency? What is he trying to fulfill? What is he trying to achieve? In fact, I can confidently tell you that he can't even satisfy his own supporters, because his own supporters don't even want to go to war. I don't know how many Taiwanese people will choose peace over war. As a philosophy professor, I spent many hours in the past few days to try to figure out what is going through President Lai's mind. My conclusion is as follows. From the date Taiwan finished its presidential election, January 13th, to his inauguration in May 20th, this long 4 months, the United States has sent many government representatives to Taiwan, especially Laura Rosenberger. I think I got her name right here. Underground ambassador of US to Taiwan. And she had visited Taiwan many times during this period. I initially thought the Americans were here to warn President Lai not to be provocative and not to speak something foolish, which might jeopardize the regional security. However, I am totally shocked that the result is President Lai gave such an extreme speech. So I have all the reason to believe that President Lai's speech is in coordination of the United States. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the Americans ordered him to give such a speech. Why? I think this is part of US strategy to maintain its hegemony. I have to first remind my audience that this fight over hegemony is a term and mindset of the Americans, not of China. China is not capable and not willing to reach hegemony stage of the United States. China aimed for a peaceful ascension. China has only adapted reform for 40 years, and we were only considered as well-fed for 30 years. I do not believe China will easily give up peace, reform, or economic advancement. This is a war trap set by the Americans, hoping China will jump in willingly, knowing that around the entire planet, this is the only place in which US can successfully bait China into a war. President Lai is simply a puppet of US and a bait set by the United States. What China conducted is not just a military drill. It's something that can turn any time into a hot war. Now, the third and final point. Taiwanese know that there's a small amount of population in Taiwan that aim to achieve independence. There are people in Taiwan who consider themselves not the descendants of the same ancestors as China. We don't even try to expose them, because we never thought they would succeed. It is a stupid idea. Why would you talk to people who don't even recognize their own ancestors? However, what President Lai did was to disregard the majority of Taiwan people's preference. Does President Lai understand the consequence of the things he said? His ignorance, his incompetence, his immoral behavior, believing that he could speak the things he said without carrying any consequence. His ignorance combined with the American trap will bring tragedy to Taiwan. I want to make the following statement. As a lifetime student of philosophy, there's nothing more horrifying in this world than ignorance. The world evolves through a series of decisions and consequences. Your decision will carry an outcome, an aftermath. If you understand this logic, then you will understand how a wise leader needs to go to the root of the problem, the beginning, to fix it, to avoid an undesirable consequence. Maybe it is too late for me to say all these things now, but I hope China will not fall into the war trap set by the Americans and President Lai. And I have a final message for President Lai. When the time comes, when it is time for all of us to face the consequence of your speech, don't try to escape. I believe you won't be able to successfully escape anyways, even if you want to. I skipped some parts that are repetitive, but I think I got most of the translation right. A Chinese audience can verify if I'm wrong. I want to move to the Chinese side before I come to a conclusion myself. And today's conclusion might be a relatively long one. Now let's move to Professor Jin here, which I featured him also a few videos ago. This is what he said, very short. China is aiming to achieve unification through peaceful means, and China has given patience and sincerity to achieve that end. However, the newest event, the speech given by President Lai, it is a signal that Taiwan independent group is willing to take risk. So China is running out of options. If the ruling party and the leadership is willing to turn back, peaceful unification is still achievable. However, if the current leadership continues down the path to seek independence, then we're on a path to war. I believe Chinese government is being extremely generous with the current situation and hasn't thrown in all our weight yet. Not because we are incapable of doing so, but we do not want to. We want to pressure Taiwan so the people can wake up and recognize the dangerous path they're taking. If the people remain ignorant, then they have to carry the consequence. We go to Professor Zhang right here. The unification process is entering a fast lane. That's a very artistic way of putting it. The newest document released by the Chinese government has removed peaceful unification as a primary objective, but instead just said unification. So they removed the word peaceful. I do not think there will be another president election in Taiwan. Very short. There are other geopolitical commentators who didn't even comment that much on his speech, and they went straight into where should we land on Taiwan and which city shall we capture first. That's almost what they go to directly. Like what weapon they'll be using, go straight to the strategy phase and not even talk about Mr. Lai's speech at all. So that's what's going on. Okay, let's jump straight into the conclusion of this video today by me, which is going to be a little bit long. I usually don't like long conclusion, but today I want to draw a slightly longer conclusion, okay? I'm gonna put out a few points for my audience to think about, and then I'm also going to quantify, okay? I'm gonna put a percentage on my thoughts so my audience can relate to, and then I will let my audience to decide what is going to happen in the next coming month or year, okay? Here we go. Number one, the chance of China giving up on unification without a fight, meaning letting Taiwan to just gain and go independence. To my understanding, I think this is very accurate, is close to none. But I would say less than 1%. Because I don't like to say 0%. I always like to leave some, room there for miracle to happen. But in terms of China just letting Taiwan go, it's less than 1%. Let's put it that way. For a lot of people who do not understand, there is other videos to talk about it, centuries of humiliation, this and that. I'm not gonna talk about that, but I'm gonna bring you guys to this map, okay? This is a night map of China. As you can see, from Shanghai, which is I'm gonna show you here, and to Shenzhen, and along the entire coast, okay? This is the most well-developed and the richest place in China so far. And you can see where Taiwan is, okay? And if Taiwan is becoming something of a US proxy, you can see how unbearable, let's put it that way, for China in that kind of situation. So for, let's say, I know this can be difficult to explain to Europeans, because if you guys understand this, you won't get into the mess you are in right now in Ukraine. Now, however, for Americans, let me try to explain this. You guys probably hear some kind of explanation like this. Now, this is the night map of United States, okay? You can see that also there's a lot of high intensity on both coasts and along the coast, right? Now, imagine all the richest city and most prosperous city on the West Coast is moved to the East Coast, okay? We have super high focus on the East Coast right now, all right? And then you move Cuba all the way to the shore of the East Coast, right in the middle. And then you have Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Syria, all these countries come into Cuba and try to militarize Cuba and make it more safe, and then we telling Americans that we don't hate you Americans, we just don't like your government. That's all. And you can wonder and figure out how offended American is. So if you look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, to China, this is basically Cuban Missile Crisis on steroid. It's like putting the most intensive cup of espresso and then pour Red Bull in it, and then also put Viagra in it, and then have China drink it. So that's what's going to happen in Taiwan in the coming months and years. Now, the second point I'm making here, chance of peaceful unification when President Lai is in power is also less than 1%, so close to zero. As the professor already explained, so President Lai is basically Zelensky, a pure US puppet by now. Now, let's go to the third point. The chance of Taiwan becoming anywhere close to true independence in the future, as long as the United States stays what it is and does not collapse or go into civil war and those kind of things, is also less than 1%. Okay, so Taiwan will never, in geopolitical terms, become anything close to a sovereign nation. No way. If you have questions, go ask John Mearsheimer or Professor Jeffrey Sachs. I don't want to spend, a few hours explaining that. You understand it. If you still don't, after 27 months of Ukraine war, you will never understand. Let's let that go. All right. Let's go to 4. When President Lai is in power, he just got power, by the way, so that's 4 years to go. And after 4 years, he can also re-elect and get another 4 years. What's the chance of him saying all those things, aggressive things, on the first day of the inauguration and his presidency, and without massively enhancing Taiwan's defensive capability in the coming months and years? So he say all those aggressive things on his first day, not being conservative, and do nothing afterward? What's the chance of that? Also, close to zero. But I would say put a 5% there. So 95% chance that he will massively improve Taiwan's defensive capability towards independence. All right. So now we jump to number 5. If you guys cannot connect the dots, you can take a break and take notes. All right. Number 5. What will be the cause of China unification with Taiwan by force? Trillions, probably. Not just direct military costs, but also costs in international stage. There might be some sanctions and seize of asset and all those things, okay? However, if China do not act soon, every year it waits, it's going to be more difficult and more costly. As we summarize, China has to unify with Taiwan, and then peaceful unification is close to impossible. We said that already. But unification by force have to come also quick, because the longer it waits, the more costly it will be, because it will give Taiwan time to arm itself and make itself into a, what's that animal called? Hedgehog? Hedgehog, yes. So that's that. You can't imagine yourself as what happened in Ukraine 2014. I'm not here to be anti-Ukraine or anti-Russia or anything. So if Russia and Putin decide to do what is necessary back in 2014, then the cost will be a lot less for both countries, Ukraine and Russia, in terms of life loss, than waiting for 8 years and then start the war and start the fight and the war to look at the cost of Ukraine and Russia and to Europe and to everybody. So it costs a lot more. So this 0.5 means that there's a good chance that China will have to act soon or just let Taiwan go. So that's two choices. Number 6, all right? Taiwan has already changed its school textbook. So the chance of Taiwanese to unify willingly with China will only decrease as time goes by. According to statistics, it's less than 7% already at this point. So it's going to get even lower. Number 7, Taiwan is currently run by a puppet US regime. It's almost all the political analysts more or less agree by now. If those who do not agree, they have to accept now after the presidential speech by President Yuan. So I already explained that, and I have other video explained it as well. And US is aimed to contain China and hopefully put forward some kind of global financial reset. So the best time to do this financial global reset and to contain China is actually to get China to enter a war, such as with Taiwan, because this will have the highest chance to attract countries to re-anchor its financial system with the West, and also start more military alliance by saying that, see, China is aggressive and this and that, and have the Southeast Asia to alien itself to China. So I explained this in other video, but I can do a quick scenario of what that might look like. For example, the US will start shipping massive amount of weapons to Taiwan and help Taiwan to construct defensive structure and storage facilities and training personnel and information radar center, which US and CIA built for Ukraine during 2014 to 2022. I think 12 of them directly funded by the United States, all right? So China will be pissed and see that as US arming Taiwan for its eventual declare of independence. I mean, just look at Ukraine. Don't need to explain this part too much. So China will start military blockading Taiwan. And with or without Taiwan's acting aggressively towards that blockade, because blockade itself is kind of a declaration of war or some kind of violent, action already, US will go like, oh, China is being aggressive to a powerless neighbor, all right? We need to seize all its financial assets and kick it out of the international system, just like what they did with Russia. So basically erasing all the money that US owe to China, which is good for US in a way. Then again, the more important thing is to kick China out of the international system. And if China is not able to quickly adapt a new system and start, trading, interacting with other countries around the world, it will get into a lot of trouble. This is also basically because, unlike Russia, China is more vulnerable. So this is a good way to collapse China without going to war against China, because direct war will risk nuclear escalation, just like the case with Russia. They don't want to go straight in, right? By the way, China is much more vulnerable than Russia because China is more integrated with the world. You rely a lot more on trade, and China also has a much bigger population to feed. So China do not want to place itself in such risky situation. So with all the things I just said, if you guys cannot connect the dot together, I'll connect it for you. I'll summarize it into 2 points. So China won't let go of Taiwan. That's almost for sure. And US need to get China into a war, got Russia into a war, in order to isolate and contain China. So with just these 2 points, I will predict that there's quite a high chance for some kind of conflict in the coming months and years, all right, in the Taiwan Strait. The only major variable here is 2024 US election. However, it matters not that much because the deep state of US control Taiwan government, not the White House. So it's just a matter of time, Trump or not Trump. And Trump and Republicans are also very hawkish towards China. This might be a plan they're willing to go forward with. So I will make the following predictions. Oh my god. Predictions usually what get, geopolitical commentators into problem. But this is just for fun, okay? Conflict between Taiwan and China happening. And starting a blockade, I will consider also starting off a conflict. Even if, let's say, Taiwan just surrender and nobody's killed and unification is done, I would consider that's also like an aggressive action and starting of a war. A war with no casualty, that is. So this is, I would say, roughly my prediction, all right? There's a 30% chance that there will be a war this year, 2024. A 35% chance next year, 2025. And another 35% chance that a war will happen between 2026 and 2028. So that's my roughly prediction. Some kind of intensive escalation will happen over the time period of the next 4 years. And even if I put 2024 as the lowest, 30%, you have to understand we're already halfway through 2024. So we only have 6 months, 7 months to go. So that's a very high percentage that something might happen, especially before and after the US election. That will be, I would say, the most vulnerable part. That would be the most vulnerable time for United States, I can say. And since Joe Biden is behind in the presidential election, he might really push hard for Taiwan to trigger some kind of confrontation with China and then say that, well, we have to cancel the election. Sorry, there's a war happening. That's what Zelensky did as well, right? So maybe that is the plan of United States. I don't know. I don't think so. At the moment, I would say that for the presidential election, I would say 60% chance Joe Biden will win or, get elected for special reasons. I never underestimate the willingness of US establishment to do whatever is necessary to get its candidate into power. And that candidate is not Donald Trump. Even though I don't like Donald Trump that much, but they're willing to do a lot. So be careful. Oh, final point. For people who always like to have a more intensive discussion or argument with me in the comment section, it takes a keen and experienced eyes, okay, to tell that I'm not really a Chinese. So if I go back to China, the Chinese people there will almost not instantly, but over a couple minutes of exchange with me, they will basically realize that I'm not really a Chinese. And if you're a foreigner, you have to go and live in China for, let's say, 5-6 years, or maybe even over a decade. And then when you talk to me, you say that, okay, this is not a normal Chinese, or it's not really a Chinese I'm speaking to right now. And for Chinese, all right, who accuse me to be too brainwashed by the Americans, which many of them do, including almost all my relatives, you have to, as a Chinese, you have to really know the Americans and the Europeans, or whatever you want to say, I am. And you have to know them for also, a decade to say that, okay, this Chinese guy is also not Americans, which Americans agree with me, right? I'm not really that American either. So I'm kind of somewhere in between. But for people who are not experienced, they will definitely jump up here and say that, okay, this is a Chinese propaganda. He's just brainwashed by the Chinese. And I have another channel. I think Small Town or something. The lady from that channel actually went into one of my video, and then he's like extremely pro-Chinese, and he cursed at me and say that I'm just a propagandist from the West. He left, and she never came back. So it takes time. You have to find that, okay, I'm kind of something in between. So again, the purpose of my channel, okay, is to get the Chinese perspective out there. And if you think that the things I give you is misleading, you have to first of all be a Chinese in order to accuse me, right? And you can address me and say that, okay, this is not how Chinese think. Chinese think some other way, and I will, look at it and correct myself. First is to get the perspective out, and then second, if you have question to, you don't understand why Chinese think this way, I will try my best in the comment section to explain to you why Chinese think this way. All right. And if you really want to start a discussion or debate with me, that is secondary. That's not that important. It's not the purpose of this channel. All right. I might have time to entertain you. I might not, depending on how you ask your question. Sometimes it's very offensive and aggressive. I know that, your cup is already full. There's no point for me to get into a discussion with you. But if you really show yourself to be someone who's patient and calm, I can start to get into more deeper discussion with you. So, and also I want to tell my audience that I am getting Shadowban really hard. So in order to overcome the Shadowban, I work with several other YouTube creators. In order to overcome that, I need a lot of my supporters and audience who watched this video this far already. Please push the like button, because what YouTube do with this kind of Shadowban is that with a certain amount of like, they will push the video. But if your video or your channel is getting Shadowban, then they will do like a division, like divide it by 2 or 3, and then push it through the algorithm. So the algorithm will say that, okay, this video nobody really like it, so I'm not gonna push it. So I need extra amount of likes from everyone, especially the ones who finish watching my video and like it. Please press the like button so I can push through into more audience bases. Okay, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.